Welcome back. With costs surging for essentials like gas and food, coupled with higher interest rates impacting credit card usage and borrowing costs, managing finances has become notably more expensive. This situation can be particularly challenging for those on tight budgets. So beyond the obvious cutbacks and shopping for cheaper alternatives, what strategies should Zoomers consider to survive inflation? And I'll go back to you, Sylvain, because before the break we were talking about food. So specifically, what advice do you have for people who are on fixed incomes or who may not be, but who are struggling to afford to put food on the table? I mean, I've heard of some people actually changing their diets.
No, absolutely. And so a lot of people are being left behind for sure. If you're leaving your home without knowing for sure exactly how much you should be paying for certain items on your list, you'll be sticker shocked. So you got to avoid that scenario. Do your homework. Everything's online now, unlike 3-4 years ago. So you can actually check prices. Try to alternate between stores over 2-3 weeks. If you can only visit one grocery store per week, go to different stores. I would alternate between a regular grocery store, a discount store, and a specialty stores. And after a few months, you'll get a better sense of prices, and you'll be able to anticipate swings, and you'll know when to shop, what day, what time, because prices actually change on a daily basis, and a lot of consumers don't know that.
I do want to point out, though, just how ridiculous that sounds, that now it's become so expensive for people to buy basic groceries that they have to be the savviest shoppers in the world. They've got to look online at between 20 different stores. And what I think about is that there has to be a better way. There has to be something the government can do. And if you look back at Empire's profits, you have to go all the way back to 2013 to find the time that they were making consistently the amount of profits that they're making today. So something's happened, and there has to be something the government can do to bring down these prices. And the solution cannot be that shoppers have to go to 5 different grocery stores and price match between all of them in order to be able to afford their basic needs. And it just seems so crazy to me.
It's well known that what grocery stores do, and most retailers do, is they put the products with the highest margins at eye level. That those are the ones that you're most likely to grab. So if you look down towards the bottom of the shelves, chances are you'll find a cheaper version of what it is that you're looking for.
That's a good tip. I didn't know that. But what about for individuals that may be reevaluating their investment strategies? Should people cash out of their investments? Do you have any recommendations there?
In terms of advice for somebody with a portfolio, if you look at the advice that people in that business, financial advisors, are giving, one of the things that's happening that hasn't happened for a long time is that bonds are now becoming there's a much greater return on bonds, which are much lower risk than equities. So that's something that many portfolio managers are doing, is moving portfolios back away from when they were so heavily weighted in equities, when interest rates were 1 or 2% and you couldn't earn anything on bonds, now to where you can earn 5, 6, 7% on bonds. So it is a way to try and it's not guaranteed, but it's a way to try and get a greater return with less risk.
So maybe I'll just ask this, because none of you are consumer advocates, but what is the bottom line? What is the most important thing you would prioritize when it comes to managing your finances during times of inflation? Brett, I'll start with you.
Well, I think bonds are a good suggestion, but really the golden goose of all of this are treasury bills, good old-fashioned treasury bills. You can now put your money into money market funds that are generating 4 to 5% in annual interest, and that's the most secure way to hold your money. It's backed by central banks, and that's the most consistent return that you'll likely get. But when markets are this volatile, you have to play it conservatively, be secure about where you're putting your money, and make sure you can generate enough returns to help you offset the cost of living increases that we're seeing in housing and groceries. So find stable, secure investments and hope that gets you through this period of high inflation.
Jim, what's the bottom line?
Well, I'll give you unconventional advice here, Marissa. If you're concerned about your paycheck keeping up with inflation, your decision should be to join a union. That's where you have the chance to negotiate collectively and get wages that hopefully will more than cover the cost of higher inflation. And we've seen some great wage increases coming out of union contracts in the last little while. For example, the auto workers at Ford have a new contract with a 10% increase in the first year, 25% over 3 years. And that, I think, will help them make sure that they keep the roof over their head and groceries in the kitchen.
That's right.
I can add on to the unconventional advice that Jim gave, which is you also should consider voting for politicians that are actually going to regulate the industries that are bleeding you dry. And so I think that's another unconventional piece of advice on top of the collective organizing. But there's solutions out there to these problems. They don't just exist in the ether and there's nothing we can do. So we shouldn't feel completely helpless about it. There is an opportunity now to negotiate for better wages in a high interest rate environment, in an inflationary environment. That is good long-term for workers. And then there's a lot of regulatory activity that can be done to finally crack down on some of these uncompetitive markets.
Well, and I think, Sylvain, it's important to note just before we wrap, but unlike the telecom industry, the food industry isn't regulated to the same extent, right?
That's right. Yes, and it should stay that way. Be gone, Chicken Little, I think. To be honest, when I started my career, interest rates were at over 15%, and the unemployment rate was over 15%, and we all survived. I remember when I was a kid going to the grocery store, we could only buy things that were on sale, and we survived. We'll be fine.
Well, but I just don't feel like that's the way, that shouldn't be what we're striving for. We should try to live more secure and better lives, and we should try to...
But we are. We have one of the lowest food inflation rates in the world.
But to point out to Jim's point, you know, when you look at unemployment at 7%, that's just not a number. Those are, you know, millions of people that can't find work, that can't pay for their daily essentials, that you're recommending use 15 different apps and shop around at 6 different stores to get the best price. And what I would hope for is that we look to something better. We at least try to create a better future for our collective, for all Canadians.
And I will just say this, that perception does play a significant role. And I think when it comes to consumer prices, it's very difficult.
Chicken Little.
Chicken Little. All right, quick break. On the other side, a journey that led to an incredible milestone. You do not want to miss this one.